It's called Debs, motherfucker! What's my shit, bitch?
I want to say to the American people, the United States Senate will not be intimidated. We will not be kept out of this chamber by thugs, mobs, or threats. They tried to disrupt our democracy. They failed. They failed. They failed to attempt to obstruct the Congress. This failed insurrection only underscores how crucial the task before us is for our republic. We will certify the winner of the 2020 presidential election.
It is very, very difficult to put into words what has transpired today. I have never lived through or even imagined an experience like the one we have just witnessed in this Capitol. Make no mistake, my friends, today's events did not happen spontaneously. The president who promoted conspiracy theories that motivated these thugs, the president who exhorted them to come to our nation's capital, egged them on. He hardly ever discourages violence and more often encourages it. This president bears a great deal of the blame. We will resume our responsibilities now, and we will finish our task tonight.
Courtesy of CBS News, Joint Chiefs remind military of duty to support and defend Constitution. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking officers in each branch of the military, sent a remarkable memo to all members of the armed forces on Tuesday, reminding them of their duty to uphold the Constitution and reaffirming the President-elect's inauguration on January 20th. American people have trusted the armed forces for the United States to protect them and our Constitution for almost 250 years. As we have done throughout our history, the U.S. military will obey lawful orders from civilian leadership, support civil authorities to protect lives and property, ensure public safety in accordance with the law, and remain fully committed to protecting and defending the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The memo denounced the attacks on the Capitol on January 6, during which supporters of President Trump overran the building in a violent assault that resulted in the deaths of 5 people. So even the military is coming out and saying that these attacks that Trump has basically approved of is a violation of the Constitution. It's treason. It's insurrection. And it must be put down. Hey there, YouTube. Bed, Bath, and Bong's here. Thank you so much for joining me for another round of Bong commentary. Tonight's show, I'm going to be interviewing a good friend of mine, John Garland, concerning the idea involving Donald Trump, how he got so much evangelical support in 2016 through Jerry Falwell Jr., and how through that falling out is why Jerry Falwell Jr. was exposed for the cuck that he is. And the fact that it was only covered up for so long because of said endorsement in 2016. He made everyone believe that Donald Trump was a born-again Christy, just like them. But it was really just politics and blackmail behind the scenes. Usual story in Washington, D.C. And then we're also going to delve into the fact that Trump's evangelical base is crumbling, leaving behind only xenophobic racists, super far-right type people, neo-Nazis, etc., and he's really playing his hand. They've really exposed themselves for the pieces of shit traitors that they are. So I'll be discussing all that with my good friend John Garland coming up here soon. But for now, let's do our traditional Bong commentary tradition. I don't know why I said tradition twice. And let's get a little high. You know, that's probably why I said tradition twice. So let's go ahead. Keep in mind I took a little nap. So this is me completely sober now. But that will not last very long. Let's go ahead and move on to our main food groups here. We have a couple mushroom caps. We're gonna go ahead and start off with that. Mmm. Throw a stem in there for some good measure. Mmm. Gotta say, I think Mario was onto something. Because that's some good shit. Let's move on to our beautiful mimosa. Our beautiful green mimosa. Woo-wee. We're moving on to our dab here soon. Oh yeah. So moving on to this business with Jerry Falwell Jr. and Michael Cohen. So let me go ahead and just start with some of the basic foundations of the story first. Jerry Falwell Sr., the one who started Liberty University and was the founder of all these different, church functions in his church, etc. He passed away in 2007. And an author at the time that was writing about the family commented quite a bit how Jerry Falwell Jr. did not really want to be in the spotlight. He wasn't a very big media figure. He worked a lot behind the scenes. He was a pillar and a leader in the Christian community, but he didn't speak that much. And then Donald Trump came along. And all these things started happening. So next I have this video lined up of Jerry Falwell Jr. commenting on his endorsement of Donald Trump, how he's endorsing him, and we're not electing a pastor-in-chief, we're electing a commander-in-chief. So let's go ahead and just give this video a little watch for context.
Jerry, thanks so much for being with us. When you hear Donald Trump refer to Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas, when he calls Secretary Clinton a lowlife, do you take issue with that at all? Is that a Christian thing to do, in your opinion?
Well, I'm president of a university. We have a Division I football team, and we have lots of players who might have relatives or friends on opposing teams, but when the whistle blows, it's every man for himself. And I think politics is the same way. And I think it's the way the game is played. It's a blood sport, and I wouldn't expect anything less from somebody who wants to win the presidency.
I know you say that people should stop trying to choose political leaders who they believe are the most godly because only God knows people's hearts. What about judging candidates according to their actions? I mean, isn't that really the only way to assess who a candidate is, what they actually believe in?
No, I think the way to assess a candidate is their experience. I think with Donald Trump, his experience and success in the private sector is one of the reasons I chose to support him, because I've been president. Before that, I was general counsel of a university that was in financial trouble in the 80s and 90s, and we brought in the best experts to make it the most prosperous university in the country now, one of the most prosperous, I should say. And it's, I think the country needs the same type of, I think the country needs a doctor who has the cure for America's ills. I think we're at a turning point. I think we could lose our country if we don't choose the right president this time. And I think Donald Trump is the man for this point in history.
I wonder what you worked obviously closely with your dad, who founded the Moral Majority. What do you think he would have made of Donald Trump?
I think he was roundly criticized for supporting Ronald Reagan over Jimmy Carter, who was a Southern Baptist Sunday school teacher. Ronald Reagan was a Hollywood actor who had been divorced, remarried. Everybody said my dad was an apostate for supporting somebody like Reagan, but Reagan turned out to be a much better president for issues that Christians were concerned about than Jimmy Carter was. And I think you have to look past, you can't be, we're not electing a pastor-in-chief, we're electing a commander-in-chief, and we can't expect our commander-in-chief to have the same qualities as our pastors. And I think most of the rank-and-file evangelicals have figured that out on their own. I think some of the leadership has been slow to...
So next we're going to be talking about Michael Cohen and how he plays his role in all of this. So those of you who don't know who he is, he was Trump's personal lawyer for many, many years. He's known as the Trump fixer. He made sure to help clean up basically a lot of Trump's schemes and such. Months before evangelical leader Jerry Falwell Jr.'s game-changing presidential endorsement of Donald Trump in 2016. By the way, this is by Reuters. Article back in 2016. Falwell asked Trump fixer Michael Cohen for a personal favor, he said in a recorded conversation. Falwell, president of Liberty University, one of the world's largest Christian universities, said someone had come into possession of what Cohen described as racy personal photographs, the sort that would typically be kept between husband and wife, Cohen said in the taped conversation. According to a source familiar with Cohen's thinking, the person who possessed the photos destroyed them after Cohen intervened on the Falwell's behalf. The Falwells, through a lawyer, declined to comment for this article. Cohen, who began a 3-year prison sentence this week for federal campaign violations and lying to Congress, recounted his involvement in the matter in a recording made surreptitiously. I didn't pronounce that quite correctly. Surreptitiously, I believe that's correct, by comedian Tom Arnold on March 25th. Portions of the recording in which Cohen appeared to disavow parts of his guilty plea were first reported April 24th by the Wall Street Journal. The Falwells enlisted Cohen's help in 2015, according to the source familiar with Cohen's thinking, the year Trump announced his presidential candidacy. At the time, Cohen was Trump's confidant and personal lawyer, and he worked for the Trump organization. The Falwells wanted to keep a bunch of photographs, personal photographs, from becoming public, Cohen told Arnold. I actually have one of the photos, he said, without going into specifics. It's terrible. Cohen would later prove successful in another matter involving Falwell. Two people familiar with the matter told Reuters. Cohen helped persuade Falwell to issue his endorsement of Trump's presidential candidacy at a critical moment, they said, just before the Iowa caucuses. Falwell subsequently barnstormed with Trump and vouched for the candidate's Christian virtues. Reuters has no evidence that Falwell's endorsement of Trump was related to Cohen's involvement. The source familiar with Cohen's thinking insisted the endorsement was to help with the photographs were separate issues. Cohen's connection to Falwell shed light on the formidable alliance between Trump and a man who, through his university, is one of the most influential evangelical figures in America. Falwell backing helped galvanize evangelicals and persuaded many Christians concerned about Trump's past behavior to embrace him as a repentant sinner. Falwell's support for Trump has not wavered throughout the New York celebrity politician's own tribulations, according to Access Hollywood recording of Trump talking about grabbing women's genitals and payoffs made by Cohen to hide Trump's extramarital affairs. This past weekend, Falwell tweeted that Trump should have had 2 years added to his first term to make up for the 2 years of the Mueller investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. So it goes on about the endorsement and the different conspiracy theories Trump has pushed and how he's had so much help from the evangelicals throughout his presidency. And you kind of see how this web just kind of falls together. I wish I had a crazy-ass like Glenn Beck chalkboard with some string. Just go full Alex Jones on this shit. Except this is actually, it seems to ring pretty true to me.